It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back to Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew version 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, so I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're covering some more Final Fantasy, and we have a new mill commander, so of course we got to talk about it. Today we're talking about Hope Estheim. Hope is a 2/2 Azorius human wizard with lifelink, with a very interesting but fun ability. Beginning of our end step, each opponent mills X, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. I think this is a really interesting commander, and one that I expect to be pretty darn popular, because it takes two colors, a color that's very good at mill in blue, and a color that's very good at gaining life in white, and smashes them together into a commander that does everything that both sides want to do. Not only do we want to gain a ton of life, but we also want to mill our opponents. And there's going to be worlds where we just do a lot of both, getting a ton of life, milling a ton of cards, and just becoming a real threat to the board. I think it's interesting. As we get more and more mill pieces, mill continues to be more and more of a threat. And as we'll talk about in this video, I think Hope benefits from so many of the new pieces we've gotten, and I think this deck has a chance to really be one of those mill decks. You know, other than, the Bruvac, shenanigans, I think this is one of those decks that's going to become a real threat to a lot of people. And I think, we're not doing bad on our budget. I think the deck's solid for what it is. But in a higher budget, I think this is going to be a really effective deck that's going to take a lot of people off guard. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit early for $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. Well, okay. So, life gain equals mill, right? There's a lot of ways to look at that. Remember, our opponents have 99 cards in their library at the start, 92 on the start of the game, 91 on turn 1. So, truthfully, we don't need to gain a ton of life to get our process started, but the more pieces we can have together to make this better, the better this is going to be. So as far as life gain goes, there's a lot of ways we can do this. I think Beacon of Immortality is probably the type of card that's going to immediately see a lot of people's eyes go to it, just double our life total, and that's 40 cards milled, right? And, probably depending on what turn we do this on. Congregate gains us 2 life for each creature on the battlefield. Again, allowing us to mill a ton of cards. I love the idea of something like Angel of Destiny. Whenever a creature we control hits a player in combat, we and that player both gain that much life. And then beginning of our end step, if we have at least 15 more life than our starting life total, each player Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game. I think this is one of those creatures that's going to be a real threat in this deck, because not only is it going to probably gain us a ton of life, but it's going to threaten another way to knock someone out, right? Another way to really knock someone out of the game and make the mill plan a little bit more doable. Healed's Intervention can just gain us twice X life. Again, a good way to mill a bunch of cards at once. Riot Control can have us gain a life for each creature our opponents control and prevent all damage to be dealt to us this turn. Union of the Third Path draws us a card and gain each life equal to the number of cards in our hand. Again, these are more piddly ways to gain life, probably only 5 or 6 or 7 maximum, but that is something in the grand scheme of things, especially when we start affecting how much life we gain. Caduceus, I think, is almost near perfect for Hope. It gives Hope lifelink, even though I believe Hope already has lifelink. Okay, I thought they did. Just wanted to confirm. If we have 30 or more life, Hope gets +5/+5, indestructible, and prevent all damage to be dealt to it. This takes out 2 of the easiest ways to get rid of Hope. The only thing left would be exile-based removal, but Hope would then go from a 2/2 to a 7/7, right? Upping the floor of the amount of cards we're going to mill each turn. And, just helping Hope stick around. Adventurer's Journal gains us a card for each life in our hand, each card in our hand at the start of our turn. Again, going to start the process right, hopefully gaining us 4 or 5 life and just allowing us to start the number the right way. But where I think we can get better is things like Angel Vitality. Whenever you gain life, you gain that much +1 life instead. There's a bunch of these effects in our deck that we can really take advantage of. Exemplar of Light grows every time we gain life and draws us cards the first time each turn it grows. Celestine can get creatures back from our graveyard, where X is the amount of life we gain this turn. I think Celestine is going to become really important because of certain creatures in our deck that we'll talk about in the mill section, and and even like something like Angel of Destiny. Celestine's going to be able to get them back at the beginning of our end step and allow them to keep coming back, hopefully, and sticking around to take real advantage of the next turn. And if they die, hopefully we can keep getting them back that way. Another great target for Celestine is Felidar Sovereign at the start of our turn. If we have 40 more life, we win the game. Here's an outlet to potentially win the game just on the amount of life we have. And if our whole goal is going to be gaining life, which we want to mill our opponents, we should be able to keep our life total pretty high. Rock's Faithmender doubling the amount of life we would gain. Excalibur 2 says whenever we gain life, we put a counter on it, and the equipped creature gets a +1/+1 for each counter on it. Again, Excalibur 2 is great for any creature that has lifelink. Dump it on there, allow it to get bigger, get more life, right, which equals more mill, and I think that's what makes Excalibur a really fun option for us. One of the 2 new crystals we're playing in the deck, the Wind Crystal, whenever we gain life, we gain twice that much life instead. Cleric class, right, if we gain life, gain that much +1 life. Same thing with Leyline of Hope, right, just 1 more life than we would means 1 more card, which can add up. Cleric class does allow us to start putting counters on creatures whenever we gain life, which is nice, again, because Hope has lifelink. We have other creatures that have lifelink. Those counters are going to matter. Leyline of Hope will buff our creatures once we have 7 or more life than our starting life total, which is going to be very easy to accomplish in our deck, allowing all of those creatures with lifelink just to get more value. But I think we also want to care about mill. I think it'd be really easy just to make this a life gain deck, and I think that would be more than fine. But again, I think Hope's the perfect combination of life plus mill, and we're playing all the mill stuff. Bruvac, the Grandiloquent. If an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill twice that many cards instead. The big thing to remember about Celestine is it's at the start of your end step. Meaning if we have Celestine go off before Hope, you could get something like Bruvac back and then have everybody mill twice that many instead, right? A pretty brutal combo. Ruin Crab, whenever a land comes in, each opponent mills 3 cards. Again, just that nice mill over time. The Mind Skinner is one of those cards that I think is really interesting. You just got to be careful with the Mind Skinner. So its ability says if a source we control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. It leads to the same result. Now, say I have a 5/5 life linker in the air that hits an opponent. Well, that would gain me 5 life, which with Hope would mill me 5 cards on the end step. The Mind Skinner says you're just not going to gain the life, and everybody's just going to mill 5 right then. I think you get the same result, and in a lot of scenarios, I think the result might be better, making the mill happen right away as opposed to waiting till the end of the turn. But I think the only downside to the Mind Skinner is that you don't get all of these life and these life adjusting effects. You gain twice that much life, which could lead to more mill at the end of the turn. So the Mind Skinner, I think, is a really useful tool, but we need to be careful of when we're deploying it versus the rest of our deck, right? Call your losses. Target player mills half their library rounded down. Fractured Sanity, each player mills 14. Maddening Cacophony, each opponent mills 8 cards. If you kick it, they mill half their library rounded up. Again, these are always just raw mill people. Yes, we still want to be gaining life and we still want to be doing that, but I think there are scenarios where you still can run yourself into the Bruvac, Maddening Cacophony combo to mill each opponent out. The point is you still want to mill, and I think these cards are more than worth it for what we're trying to do. Mind Crank, whenever opponent loses life, they mill that many cards. Riverturn Monument can have each player mill 2, and then once per game, we can have each player mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. Again, a good way to just really compound on that. And then, of course, the new Water Crystal. If an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill that many +4 instead, which is really just going to start making our effects so much better. I think I'm intrigued to actually play against one of these decks on the table, because I think it'd be really interesting to see what this can actually accomplish over the course of a couple turns, especially with something like the Water Crystal down. I mean, think about it. Your Ruin Crab's milling everybody for 7 each time a land comes in. There's just so many fun effects that these mill things can really start compounding and hurting your opponents. You're going to get the odd game where you play into a graveyard deck and you just give them a field day. But I think it's easy to forget with mill decks that a lot of decks really don't have good ways to get stuff back in their graveyard. Yes, it's becoming more popular, but not unless they're playing a graveyard deck. If you're playing a graveyard deck, you need to be kind of afraid because you're just handing them value. But for most other decks, I mean, you're really going to be hindering them, which is why I think mill is so effective and why I think this deck will be effective as well. But to end off, I just kind of wanted to talk about where we can get more value from this. Obviously, things like Spark Double or Sakashima can just straight up copy Hope, giving you multiple targets. Go-Go seems really fun, tapping it and copying Hope's triggered ability. Note that Hope doesn't say it only triggers once per turn. It can only trigger once per turn. You can copy it. So 2 mana for Go-Go is 1 copy of it. 2 mana is 1 copy. 4 mana is 2 copies. And I mean, that can get particularly dangerous. Depending on what you mill, or sorry, how much life you've gained that turn, right? And then Will Sign a Piece can have your spells cost a little bit less for X amount of life you've gained this turn. So, maybe you go through combat, gain a ton of life, and then main 2, you tap Will to just make all your spells a little bit cheaper. I was just trying to find some more ways to interact with Hope's ability where we can really take advantage of it and just really prime ourselves for big value. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Hope. Going into testing, I chose to remove these 2 cards specifically from the deck, Boon Reflection and Test of Endurance. I mean, the budget won't matter. You put them in for $11, and the deck is objectively better. But I kind of wanted to see if we could get some more synergy in the deck. Test of Endurance is kind of like Feldar Sovereign. It just says 50 life instead of 40. Test is arguably better because it's an enchantment and not a creature, which is harder to remove. But again, another alternate win con option for you. And then Boon, just doubling the amount of life you gain. Again, the cards make a ton of sense. I was just trying to find a ways to include other effects instead of them. This is not saying they aren't good cards. I think they more than belong in the deck. I was just trying to get creative, trying to do something different. And these are the 2 cards I expect are probably going to get talked about in the comments a lot. Azorius Charm, just another way to give our creatures lifelink, maybe gain a bunch of life in one turn, and allow us to get some value. The Wind Crystal kind of gives a fun ability for 6 to give all of our creatures lifelink and flying, which is really fun. But the Azorius Charm just seems like a nice backup as a way to do that. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's just to get in some game scenarios and understand what are we looking for in our hands and how are we going to set up our game plan. This is kind of a mana-heavy hand, right? 3 lander with a Soul Ring, a Signet, Swift of Boots, Will, and Hope. But my hope, pun intended, is that this is a good set-based hand where we can draw into some more things and make some real value. So let's see what we have access to here. Turn 1, I think we'll just get a land in tapped. 2, we see Valkyrie Harbinger. This is a creature that says if we gain 4 more life in a turn, we get to make a 4/4 Flying Angel. So here I think we're just getting a bunch of pieces in. Here this turn we can get Hope in, get the Swiftfoot attached just to protect a little bit. And then should have enough for Will as well. Hope could attack if we want this turn to gain a couple life. It doesn't really particularly matter in the grand scheme of things, but it could. So now here, Hope's only at 2, so it's going to be kind of hard to get the Harbinger without getting it in for damage. So I think I would move this over and attack with the Harbinger this turn, just to get, number 1, the life gain, because that's now 4 life gain, and the Angel, right? So now everybody's milling 4, right? And we're kind of starting. If we had the extra mana, future turn, right, this could be used to reduce, right, some of our spells. Going into turn 5, Spark Double feels great on Hope here to get a copy of that. What we could do is attack with the Harbinger first, gain the 4 life, right, and then tap Will to basically put Feldar down for just 2 white and put Spark Double down for 1 as a copy of Hope. Remember, Hope goes off on the end step. So now we only spent 3 mana to get these 2 down. We got, I think we have another 2 angels now. But the point is, now we're milling 8 this turn, right? 4 here and 4 here because of the Harbinger attacking. And probably more than enough life for Feldar to go off if our opponents can't deal with it. And now they've got multiple threats, right? And I think we're just in good shape. I mean, somebody has to get rid of the Feldar. And if they do, I think we're in good shape to just keep attacking, right? Now we've got 4, 7, 9 power worth of creatures with lifelink. We can keep attacking. If somebody doesn't get rid of the Feldar, but they knock us down below the life needed, well, it has lifelink. It can get us keep going back up. I think we're just in good shape to threaten this Feldar Sovereign Test of Endurance style win con. I mean, you can put Test back in, and you could start to see that this is going to become a real threat right in our deck when we're gaining life, and hopefully not taking any life back. Well, all right, here on playtest number 2, we're keeping a 4-lander with Cleric class, Venser's Journal for some life gain as well, and then Caduceus. So I like this one a lot. We can go ahead and get Hope here on turn 2. I think we really want to get Hope down as early as possible when we can to really take advantage of it. I like the Clear class. We could Maddening, but it really doesn't make any sense. I'd rather kick it. So maybe Hope can attack here. I mean, that would be ideal. Gain 3 life. Everybody mills 3. Right. Turn 4, again, I really would like to get Caduceus down and attached, but it's just going to have to come down this turn. And then, again, hope that we can attack with Hope. I think it's a little bit less obvious. Could make more sense to do something like Blind Obedience instead to get our opponent's things coming in tapped, kind of buy us a little bit more time. Because then now we can get Caduceus in and attach this turn. So now we're a 7/7 Hope, right? Netting 8 life. Everybody's milling 8. I think we're just in a little bit better spot, right? Now this turn, right, go for something like Venser's Journal just to get the life gain. We actually could also have milled everybody for half if we wanted to. The odd thing about milling everybody for half their library rounded up is you have to remember, like, the earlier in the game, kind of the more cards you're going to get, right? People's library numbers are going to go down over the course of the game, meaning earlier in the game is the better, right? Because you're going to get more. No, I guess downside about Maddening is you could wait and try to get something like Brewback, right, to try to do the cheeky combo, but you could also just do it now to really push people ahead, right, since we're going to be getting, 7 or 8 each turn, right? This would take their library from, let's say, ideally like 88 down to 44, 8 or 9 a turn, right, really could start making a big difference. But even if you just pick the Venser's Journal, somebody has to exile Hope now. No indestructible, right? Indestructible and prevent all damage. They can't straight destroy and they can't deal damage to it. Meaning they can't really block Hope, right, effectively either. And if somebody does remove it, 4 to come back down, 2 to equip. And although it can't attack it, we're still in the same position of protecting it. And so this feels a little bit quick in the sense of we could probably flush this out more going another turn. So let's try it. Well, what would I do instead? Well, I already have maximum hand size. Start my turn, I'm gaining 3. I can go Hope for 1, 2, 3. I can go Hope to gain 10 life. I'm already up 3 to 13, right? So that's 13 with the Venser's Journal at the start of turn. Hope could potentially get me to 20. So this could be a 20 card mill turn, depending on what my opponents have access to right now, right? So that could be really fun. We could also just Cacophony right now and do it that way, just to stop, again, just to get a little bit more value from that. I mean, whether I choose to go 10 here or I choose to, 20 here, right, with that, or I just choose to do the half now, I think either way we're in good position, and I think we're just going to look good in the long term. Let's go one more playtest. I know they're a little odd, but, like, truthfully, I think a lot of what this comes down to is knowing what you're trying to do, like what's your game plan, like finding your pieces rather than seeing the interactions. Because I think you'll see the interactions as you play the deck, and you kind of see more of it. I think the goal here is trying to find the life gain and making it effective. 2 land over the Soul Rings. We got 4 total. We got Ruin Crab. We got Auroch Champion for ability to gain a life. It's when any creature comes in, we gain a life. We got a little bit of counterplay, and we got a little bit of removal. So not terrible. We don't have any flashy pieces, but I don't think we hate it. There's my thought was Glacial Fortress and tap so that I could get the Ruin Crab in, because now this mills 3, Soul Ring, and now you can either do the Mind Crank or the Talisman. And then what? Oh. Mind Crank? Hope, leave up Stroke. Hope Mind Crank seems right. Just again, continue setting up. Ventures in, everybody mills 3, we gain 2, so now we're up 2 life on the turn. 5 mana. like the idea of the stroke. We could go like Auroch, leave up the Dovin's veto if we want to. We could, stroke something, leave up the veto. Either way, hope maybe we'll attack. Otherwise, people are milling to. I kind of like the idea of just getting this down just to get some spare life gain going. Really need to draw a card, ideally. Where we're at right now. We just don't have any good ways to do it. So that's kind of the only downside right now I can see, is that we have no way to draw cards at the moment. So we're kind of just living on the edge, right? Another 3 cards milled. Yeah, maybe we attack. We have some removal. Some way to gain some life off the riot control if need be. But like I said, the only downside this hand has been the lack of card draw. But let's go one more turn. Okay, so there's Gogo. We've gained a life here. Right, Gogo can really start triggering up on future turns, right? And then there's the Faith Mending for some draw. Draw 2, pitch 2. Pitch the boots. There's Talisman, which can gain us some life. And we can flash it back for more card draw. And then, so that was what, 2? Attack for maybe 4 and then double it a couple times. I think we can double it twice at the moment. So we could be able to get 6 or 8 cards milled this turn. A little bit more of an awkward play test on this one. We didn't really see some of our big pieces. But again, we're still cobbling things together. Gogo can help, even copying these Ruin Crab mill triggers if you need to. Right, there's plenty of options. And then you still have the Mind Crank there on the back end. I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a mill. These mill decks are always odd because your goal is just to get to that everybody's life being gone, right? And I think what we want to try to do is find a way to accomplish our game plan and as consistently as we can. So whether you find that's mill or life gain, I think that's what's going to come down to how you want to make this hope deck your own. I think personally that you can do it with both. I think both horses are going to get you there. I think probably the life gain is probably the faster horse in my opinion, but I still think you could find a way. And I think we're going to see hope decks be pretty different depending on what people want to focus on, whether they want to focus on the life game, whether they want to focus on the mill. I think that's what makes it really interesting. But love to know what you think of hope down in the comment section below, and I will catch you all in the next one.